main reason that somebody, you know, using a bit, they're only as harsh as their hands are. And so for us to disengage and to give them good contact, we have to have it sitting a drop lower than what most people tell you to do, because what they're compensating for is people who don't understand those sensitive points. If we were ripping on this horse's face, we would be doing just as much damage as somebody who has a bit in its mouth, considering the placement of the rope halter. But you know, sometimes through their head placement or through just movement, it'll come down a little bit more than what we initially started at, and that's just the nature of figuring out a new horse, you know, where they're going to carry their head and where the equipment's going to sit in correlation to that, but also because we need to give clean cues and gentle cues, and so where it sits is where you can give a nice clean gentle cue. And we would never put any of our beginner riders in the thinner rope halters. They get the more broad and a little bit of a higher seat. But for Amanda and myself, who have super soft hands, it's really irrelevant because we're not yanking on it. And it really isn't, if you want to look where it's placed, people a lot of times will tell you, so that we're not on soft tissue here. We're still on bone. But you can see that's still bone. There's no, so as we get down lower, now we're starting to get into softer tissue, but this still is bone here. So we're in bone, bone, bone. I think a lot of people place it a little bit higher because they're paranoid and they've been taught so many times of those sensitive areas, which is true. They are very sensitive. If somebody were jerking on his face, I would get after them, but we're not doing that. And so for him to get a nice, clean, gentle cue, that's where we choose to sit it, so that he gets clean pressure points. Because this is a horse who probably has never been ridden bitless. So this is a dance. They're having to communicate back and forth. And if it's up higher, say here, that's a more blunt impact, and she would have to be a little more heavy on her hands for him to comprehend up here. So it allows her the ability to be very quiet with her hands here and give an ever so slight amount of pressure that he can feel and cue. So again, if this were somebody that didn't know what they were doing, we wouldn't have them in a thinner cord this low. We would have them in a fatter cord right about there, in a more lessony type horse. But this is a horse that's never done this before, so he needs to have absolutely clean communication. Birds and dogs. How you gonna do, buddy?
Oh, here comes another one.
Do 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 do.
They're coming to get you.
You know, and you guys are so right. Like, it cracks me up that people make fun of it when you look at the futurities, you know, and you look at, you know, vaqueros. They all ride in the bosals. So, I mean, this is not by any means new age. You know, if you follow a lot of, like, Buck Brannaman, he does a lot of bitless stuff.
Kelly McKnight rides in the Grand Prix in a bitless headset.
So if you guys didn't catch that, Kelly McKnight rode the Grand Prix in a bitless setup. So this is Royal Gambler. I think he's a 3 or 4 week old auction save. This is the horse you guys remember that we saw went through auction a couple years ago in a private buyer.